Welcome to the PRSS 111 Introduction to Provider Enrollment PE training session. During this session, we'll introduce the provider enrollment process, identify the different enrollment types, and provide guidance on the documentation that providers need to prepare prior to enrolling. Then we'll show you an overview of what the provider enrollment application looks like and how to submit it. Our agenda topics today, we have a welcome and opening, so we have a few more slides to cover that. And we'll jump into Provider Enrollment Wizard Part 1, where we'll access the PE Wizard. We'll go over managing an enrollment application, and then we'll jump into Part 2 of our Provider Enrollment Wizard session, where we'll complete an enrollment application. We'll go over the next steps after submission. We'll do a revalidation overview, and we will wrap everything up. Our learning objectives today in the Provider Enrollment PE application session. We will identify criteria needed to complete an enrollment application. We will submit a PE application, and we will explain the next steps after an application is submitted. And we hope you understand revalidation from the provider's perspective. So part 1 of our PE Wizard session, we have a MES introduction video for providers, which is a review of the overall process and will give you a better idea of how this class fits into becoming a VA Medicaid provider. This video can also be found on the provider training page. Then we will go over accessing the PE Wizard and managing an enrollment application.
Welcome. By now you probably know that you will need to use MES to access the new provider portal. But the steps to get set up and access this portal to perform your daily functions may not yet be clear. Let's help define this process so you know what to expect. This entire process includes 3 key steps. First, you'll need to enroll as a Virginia Medicaid provider if you are not already enrolled, or if you need to add a service location. Next, you'll need to access the MES Provider Portal. Then you'll need to set up all delegates who will perform tasks in the portal on the provider's behalf. It's that simple. The transition to using MES and the new Provider Portal starts with enrollment using the Provider Enrollment Wizard. The Provider Enrollment Wizard is a dynamic, user-friendly electronic form that you will use to submit your provider enrollment application. If you are not already enrolled, if you need to add a service location, or if you are an MCO-only provider, your first step must be enrollment. Otherwise, you will not be able to gain access to the new provider portal. Before you start the application, the Provider Enrollment Wizard has a pre-checklist generator that you can use to help identify the required documentation and information that you will need as part of your application. To generate this checklist, you will need to know the enrollment type and provider type. For more information on determining these 2 items, pause this video and copy the URL. When you go to this site, you will scroll to the bottom and select the PRSS Provider Code Value Descriptions link to download the spreadsheet. When you open the spreadsheet, select the Enrollment Type, Provider Type crosswalk to view these details. While this electronic application is intuitive to use, you may want to view the training that details each section of the application. For this training topic, you can register for the PRSS 111 virtual session that includes all possible application sections. Or if a video fits better into your schedule, you can view a video that is tailored to include only sections relevant to your enrollment type by watching the associated video in the series PRSS 112 to PRSS 117. There is also a comprehensive Provider Enrollment Wizard user guide on this provider training page. This training can be found by scrolling down to the How to Enroll as a Provider section of the Provider Training page. After your application is approved, you'll receive 2 emails with credentials to log into MES so you can access the new provider portal. In the provider portal, you should verify your provider and profile information. This was the information you included in the application. For this training topic, you can register for the PRSS 120 virtual session that includes detailed navigation demonstrations. Or if a video fits better into your schedule, you can view a shorter video version that addresses key navigation by watching PRSS 121. There is also a comprehensive Provider Portal user guide on this provider training page. This training can be found by scrolling down to the How to Use the Provider Portal section of the Provider Training page. After you gain access to the Provider Portal, if you want to assign delegates to perform tasks in the portal on the provider's behalf, you will need to set up delegate access. When you set up a delegate, that user will need to complete their MES registration to obtain unique credentials before they can start using the system. Each provider and delegate should have their own MES login credentials. For this training topic, you can register for the PRSS 118 virtual session that includes how to set up and manage delegates, their roles, and their permissions. For your convenience, there is a video recording of this session on the Provider Training page. You can also find step details related to managing delegates in the Provider Portal user guide. This training can be found by scrolling down to the How to Use the Provider Portal section of the Provider Training page. Before we end this video, we want to mention a few more training courses that might benefit you. MES 103 is a video that provides you with a detailed view of the process for logging into MES and navigating to the Provider Portal. It also includes a quick reference guide that you can save or print. MES 105 is a reference document that explains how to access additional MES modules, such as CRMS for long-term care screening and assessments. On the Provider Training page, there is a link to the CRMS training page, where you can find additional self-paced interactive courses that walk you step by step through the screening and assessment processes in the new CRMS module. We hope this video has provided you with clarification and helped you better prepare for your next steps. You are now ready to get started.
The PE Wizard is to align with CMS guidelines to manage Virginia Medicaid provider new enrollments, revalidations, and new service locations. Virginia Medicaid providers will use the PE Wizard to submit these applications. Let's go to the PE homepage now, and I'll show you how to access the PE Wizard. So from our Provider Resources homepage, you can access the PE Wizard here at this Provider Enrollment link, where you can click this link and it will take you to the PE Wizard and it will start your application for VA Medicaid. Once your application is approved, you can return here to access the MES login page and PRSS link for Provider Portal to maintain your VA Medicaid profile. And that link, if we scroll to the top, is this blue login up here. So here we are at our training environment page. To access the PE Wizard from here, I would go Menu, Provider Enrollment, and then New Enrollment. We'll go ahead and click that and open that up. Now, before starting the enrollment, it is highly encouraged to generate a pre-checklist that you can see here, enrollment pre-checklist. This is to ensure that you have all documentation ready so that you can complete your application as easily and quickly as possible. This step is particularly helpful if a delegate or staff member will be managing your application, but it is not a requirement. So to generate a pre-checklist, we would complete the fields to customize requirements for your application. So you can follow along with me to generate a pre-checklist. So here we have our different enrollment types. If you are new to VA Medicaid and you need to determine your enrollment type and provider type, there is a lookup reference document located on the provider training site, and this was the link you are asked to copy down from the earlier video. So we would go ahead and choose our enrollment type and our provider type and our specialty and our tax ID type, either our EIN or our SSN. And are you Medicare enrolled? We'll go ahead and select yes. And then we will go ahead and select that we will accept patients in FFS and MCO. Then at this point, we would go ahead and click the Generate Pre-Checklist. And I will just enlarge this so we can see it. And here we have our pre-checklist document. Now this document can be downloaded or printed for reference if you need more time to gather these required items. So from here, we would go ahead and start the enrollment application by clicking this Start button here. When you are ready to start the enrollment, you'll go ahead and click that Start button, and then you'll come to the first step, which is completing registration information. This information is used to track your application and resume an application if you start it but need to complete it later. So the email that we provide here is just for this application. Any notifications sent to this email will be related to this application only, and this email can be different than the one used to access the provider portal and receive notifications after the enrollment process is complete. And I'll show you that area of the application a little later. So we're going to go ahead and enter in our email address and our password. And this provider reference field is an optional field. It can be used as a reference to help identify the enrollment application. So this field is particularly helpful for delegates enrolling multiple providers. So at this point, we would go ahead and select Register. And once this is finished processing, we're going to get a pop-up. There we go. We'll get our pop-up saying our registration is complete, and the system will generate an application tracking number, or you'll hear me refer to it as ATN, and a message confirming that our registration is complete. So an email was automatically sent to the email that we just entered, and it's going to include that ATN and a password hint, so the first and last characters of your password. This information will be used to access and track the application. This email does not have to match the provider's contact email. It's just for the application submission. If your application is not submitted and is inactive for 30 days, it will expire. And a courtesy reminder to submit your application is sent 15 days prior to expiration. So if your application expires, an application expiration notice will be sent and you will have to start a new application. So at this point, we would go ahead and click OK to continue with the application. Here we have our application tracking number at the top of the screen, and this will be the number used to track this specific application. So we are going to go ahead and select our enrollment type. I'm going to select individual this time. Now, the application is dynamic and will only display the step you need based on the information you provide during the various steps, such as enrollment type. And I'll show you an example of that here. And we'll address that pop-up in just a moment or two. So you see these windows up here. If we selected facility organization, the windows change. The options up here change. And I'll go into this in more detail as well. I just wanted to show you the different options. So you can see the application itself is dynamic and will change. And our application tracking number is listed up here. So the step that you are currently working in is highlighted. So as we can see, general information is highlighted here, and it's highlighted with bold text so you always know where you are in the process. Now you must complete the steps in sequential order, and to navigate to a previous step, you'll click the specific tile for a completed step. Over here in the top right-hand corner, we have this little blue question mark. This is our PE Wizard help. This is located on each step of the application. So at this point, we've officially started the application for VA Medicaid. And at any point, if we need to pause and resume this application later, we can. So we're actually going to stop here in the application, and I am going to go back to our home page by clicking this home icon up here in the top left. So we are going to go ahead and leave, and we are back at our home page. So I want to make sure that you know how to reset your application password. And you can do this when you think your password has been compromised or if you just forget what it was. So to reset your password, you need to go to the Manage Password page. So to go to the Manage Password page, we're going to come up here to our menu button. We'll go down to Provider Enrollment, and then we're going to go down to Manage Password. We're going to go ahead and open this up. And here's where we would put in our application tracking number. We would enter in our existing password and then our new password and confirm our new password, and then click Submit over in the right-hand corner. Now, I don't actually want to update this password, but again, I would just click Submit to go ahead and do that at this point. Now, if you forget your password, you can use this Forgot Password link here. By clicking that, we get a Generate One-Time Password or OTP window where we can enter in our application tracking number and generate that one-time password. This will send a one-time password to the same email address that you got your application tracking number from, and you'll use that and then create a new password. So you'll enter in that one-time password, enter in the new password, you'll enter the new password again to confirm it. And again, I don't actually want to update this password, but to do so, we would click Save and then OK in a confirmation pop-up that we would get. So I'm going to go ahead and close out of this box, and we will go back to our home page. And before we continue with the application, let's see what you recall. So what menu option is selected to reset an enrollment password? Is it A, enrollment status, B, manage password, or C, resume revalidate enrollment? The correct answer is manage password. Our second question, your password for provider enrollment is or will be the same as your provider portal password. Is this true or false? The correct answer is false. Our third question, a pre-enrollment checklist is required before starting your enrollment registration. Is this true or false? The correct answer is false. It is not a requirement before starting registration, but it is strongly recommended. And our fourth question for this section, when does a new enrollment application that has not been submitted expire? After 30 days of inactivity, after 60 days of inactivity, after 90 days, or never? The correct answer is after 30 days of inactivity. Part 2 of our PE Wizard session, we will go over completing an enrollment application. Before we look at a completed application, let's talk about the steps you may see and the types of information you may need to provide. So the enrollment process in the PE Wizard has various steps that you complete in a particular order to submit your enrollment application. The PE Wizard dynamically adjusts the needed steps based on your responses throughout the application, such as enrollment type, provider type, and specialty. So some of the steps are always required regardless of the response. So here you can see the required steps are noted on this slide with blue highlight, and the asterisks always indicate required steps. For the purposes of this demonstration, we will go through and address all possible steps. So let's resume an application we've previously completed. First, we'll need the ATN located in our email. So in the registration email, you'll look for that ATN. We will need this number and the password that we created to get back into the application that was started. Hopefully you remember your password because this email will only provide a hint with the first and last characters. The rest are going to be hidden. However, as you learned in the first demonstration, if you forget, you can always reset the password. So now that we have our application tracking number, let's go back to the PE Wizard and show you how to resume the application that we previously created. So from our home page, we will go to Menu, Provider Enrollment, and then Resume Revalidate Enrollment. So you'll enter in your application tracking number, and then you'll enter in your password. And then we'll go ahead and click Resume over here in the right-hand corner. So when resuming an application, it opens to the most recent page. And based on what you select here, the windows change. So again, we get this pop-up letting us know once we have saved the information on this page, we'll not be able to change the enrollment type. So it asks us to please confirm our selection before proceeding. When we select provider type and we select our provider type in the field, we get that message here as well. So once we leave this general information page, we will be unable to change the enrollment type and the provider type. So in order to save time, instead of completing an enrollment in the session, I'm actually going to demonstrate a pre-filled application for Cassie Brown with our provider type of individual. So I'm going to go back to our home page, and I'm going to go ahead and enter in an application tracking number and a password of a previous application. So we'll go Home, Menu, Provider Enrollment, and then Resume Revalidate Enrollment. So here we've entered in our application tracking number and our password of our previously filled out application. We're going to go ahead and click Resume and bring that application up. Now, when resuming an application, it will open to the most recent page. And when we log in, we're at the Agree Submit step since that's where our application stopped. So our real life application may differ slightly from what you see here, as each application has different requirements based on your provider type, specialty, and enrollment type. So we're going to go ahead and click this general information step and start at step 1 of our application. So as you can see here, once this loads, here we go. So as you can see here, our enrollment type and our provider type are grayed out, and I'm unable to select these. So if a change is needed to these two fields, you will have to begin a new enrollment application. So here we have our enrollment type listed as individual. If applying as an individual and an individual within a group or IG provider, you'll select individual as the enrollment type to complete a single combined application. You are limited to one service location when using a combined application, and an example scenario is that you are a provider that wants to bill directly under your own provider Medicaid number and as part of a group. If you have more than one service location, you will also need to enroll as an individual within a group provider. This will require a second application. So here we have our provider type listed as doula, and then we have our effective date listed here. The effective date is generally the date of the application and is the first date on which a provider may be reimbursed for eligible services. So down here we have our provider information section. And provider information allows individual or business information, depending on the type of application. So down here, we've answered no to our enrollment questions, and we have that we'll accept patients in the following programs: fee-for-service and MCO. So select dental providers will have alternate program options, and any MCO programs selected, as you can see we have 2 selected here, but any MCO program selected will be sent to the MCO portal for review after the application is approved. So for existing MCO relationships, you add them just like this if a first-time application. So for providers that will only bill through a group, not direct, you'll select FFS. Otherwise, you will be required to input an MCO. The group you bill through will have the MCO contract. So here we've picked both of our Aetna options. To select another MCO, we would just click inside the field and our drop-down list appears with our list of MCOs. This also means that we have both of these selected. This means billing these 2 MCOs directly is being requested. So if we scroll down here to our contact information section, we have an address entered, and it is preferred that you use an address that matches USPS records. If not, you will get a pop-up. So here in the top right-hand corner of each field, we have this little tiny question mark. This is our field help icon, and if we hover over these little help icons, it gives you a little bit more information about the field itself. And any field marked with a blue asterisk is a required field. If we scroll back up to the top here, we have this skinny progress bar. This is a pre-filled application, so we're not going to see it move ahead, but right now we would be at this step in our progress bar. As you can see, our application has already been completed, so up to the agree submit step, so it is on the last step of the process. Also up here we have our print preview tab. This can be used at any point in the application process. So you can print a partial application if you need to stop and have questions, and you can also print after the application has been submitted. So our next step here, we're going to click the specialties tile and move ahead. And we will scroll down here. You can see we have this specialties table. So if we need to add a specialty, we'd click this create new box up in the top right hand corner of the table. And we have this make primary box, and one specialty needs to be selected as primary, but only one can be a primary specialty. So we would enter in our required information as needed here to add our specialty. To edit our specialty, we'd click this pencil icon here, and our window comes up with our edit specialty information. And if we scroll down here, we have our additional taxonomy table. So additional taxonomies are optional, and if I click create new here, we are not going to have any taxonomy options because none are available for a doula provider. But for other provider types, you can select related taxonomies. So I am going to go ahead and click cancel. We'll scroll back up and we will move ahead to our service location window. So here you can see we have our service location table. I'm going to go ahead and select our edit icon at the end of the location name so you can see a filled out service location. So we've got all of our information up here, our contact information. You can see here that the phone number is required. At least one phone number must be provided. So we would go ahead and click create new up in the top right hand corner of the phone number table. We also have this hours of operation table. It doesn't show any of this in blue, but the hours of operation is a required area, and you must select the create new icon here to add the required fields. So as you can see, once we click create new and get this new hours of operation window, we see they are required. So I'm going to go ahead and click cancel. And then we'll scroll down here to our service address information section. Now, individual within a group providers will only answer the service address information questions. The other questions will not display as they are completed by the group provider that will be identified later in the application. So provider type and provider specialty, or PTPS, determine whether an additional service location may be added. If the application is limited, the button will gray out after the primary service location is added. Individuals billing VA Medicaid directly and through a group can submit a combined application if they have only one service location. More than one service location will require two applications, individual and individual within a group. So it is preferred that you use an address that matches USPS records. If not, you will get a pop-up. And dental providers will have a few additional questions regarding services for children with special needs. So at this point, we would click Save and Continue. So I'll click Cancel here, but we would normally scroll down and click this Save and Continue. But again, since this is a pre-filled application, I'm going to scroll up to the top of the page and select the next window, which is our addresses window. So individual within a group providers are not prompted for address information. ORPs will only include the mail to address, and addresses not applicable to your enrollment may be left blank. So here, if we scroll down in our addresses section, we have our pay to address. We have the option here to select same as service location, which I am going to go ahead and do. Once we check that box, the system will pull over all of our information that we entered in our previous step, which is very helpful. So if we scroll down here, you can see our phone number that is required. And down here we have our mail to section. Now we have a drop down that lists our service location and our pay to address, so we can choose either option. I'm going to go ahead and choose service location so it keeps all of our information here. Now if we scroll down here to our preferred communication area, I want to point out that if you did not enter an email earlier and you choose the contact option here as email, you will get an error message. You will need to either include an email in the service location step or not use the same as service location option here. So your preferred communication here needs to match what you selected on the general information module. So addresses may be added or edited through the provider portal after enrollment approval. Again, normally we would click Save and Continue, but because this is a pre-filled application, I'm going to go ahead and scroll back up to the top, and we're going to click on our organization tile. So we're going to open up our organization step. An individual within a group providers and ORPs will not have this step. A combined individual and an individual within a group providers application will include this organization step. So here you can see we have our organization type and our tax classification, which are the only two required fields on this step. And here we have some additional information that we can add. So I'm going to scroll back up and we're going to go ahead and go to our associations step. So individual only providers will leave this step blank. Combined individual and individual within a group providers will add at least one group. Individual within a group providers, whether completing a combined application or an IG only app, are required to enter at least one group association. So groups can optionally associate with individuals. Facilities and ORPs can optionally associate with each other. Atypical providers do not have this step. So here we would go ahead and in our table, go ahead and click Create New up in the top right-hand corner. And we can add a group provider by searching by Service Location ID or NPI. I happen to have an NPI. So I'm going to go ahead and enter in that NPI. So we can search for that here. And we'll go ahead and click Search. And here you can see our search criteria. Here are our search results. So I am going to go ahead and select our provider from this list, and we will need to input an effective date. I'm going to go ahead and select today's date for the effective date and click Save. And now you can see our table is updating and that provider here has been added to our table. So I am going to go ahead and normally, again, we would click Save and Continue, but I'm going to go ahead and click our credentials step up here to move forward, and we're not going to save our changes. So I do want to note that for a combined individual within a group application, the group that we're associated with will need to assign the authorized administrator when they affiliate the group after application approval. So for an individual within a group provider only application, you will see in the Associations tab an authorized administrator checkbox where you can select the authorized administrator. So here we are at our credentials step. And this step is hidden, if not applicable, based on your entered provider type, provider specialty. So sections in this step will vary based on provider type, provider specialty. DEA will only apply to pharmacies, and effective dates must be in the past. So if a credential does not expire, you'll enter December 31st, 9999 as the end date. And to add a new credential, you'd select the Create New icon under the credential you would like to add and complete the required fields. So here you can see our required fields for this table. We would go ahead and click Save. To edit, we would click the pencil under the table, and that brings up our current information where we can edit the information or delete if necessary. So I am going to go ahead and move ahead to our other information step. And this step is where we would enter in our language information. And again, a new entry would require this create new, and then we would enter in our new information, or we can edit the current information by clicking the pencil. So here we have our certification information, our additional information with our provider website URL, our medical related organization information, our electronic claims submission participation, our claim signature waiver, and our paper remittance advice. So I am going to go ahead and scroll back up and we'll take a look at our disclosures step. So here at our disclosure step, you can see our disclosure details listed here. And if we scroll down, we see our disclosure forms. Now, the status, as you can see over here in this column, the status for each disclosure changes to completed once it's been added. And the application cannot continue to the next page until all the disclosures are completed. So I'll go ahead and open up our subcontractor disclosure here so you can see what a disclosure entails. See if we can get that to come up here. There we go. All right, so here's our new subcontractor disclosure. And again, it's dynamic. So based on your responses to the questions, you may or may not have more information to add. So as you can see, we've got tables with additional information listed here. So I'm going to go ahead and cancel. And then I'll pull up our ownership and control interest application so you can see what that entails as well. So again, based on our answers to the questions, it's dynamic, so we may or may not have additional information. Here's where we would enter in additional information, and we would click this Create New button here to add information to the tables. So as you can see, this one's a little bit more detailed based on your responses to the questions. So again, I would normally click Save and Continue, but since this is a pre-filled application, I'm scrolling up to the top, and we'll take a look at our attachments step. So here's our attachments step. You can see our provider type and our specialty are listed here, but grayed out as we are unable to change those. So here we have our requirement met table, or our required attachments table. And as you can see, the requirement met is already yes for the example, but it will start as no. So if it is no, you'll select the Create New down here in the attachments table, and you would go ahead and select our transmission method, and then we can pick our attachment type from this drop down here. Select the file from our computer and upload it here. And then that requirement met would change to a yes. So the application, again, the application cannot continue to the next page until all attachment requirements are met. So I am going to go ahead and again, we would click Save and Continue here, but I'm going to scroll up to the top. We're going to take a look at our Agreement and Submit step, and I'm not going to save my changes. So here we are at our Agreement and Submit step. So individual within a group provider applications will have a blank service location, and the group's information will be applied to the approved application. So terms and conditions verify that the information in your application is accurate, that the submitter is authorized to complete the application, that future changes related to provider information will be shared with the Virginia Medicaid program, and that the submitter understands the state policies. So provider portal registration will be optional for individual within a group providers who designate an authorized administrator. If an individual within a group provider declines access during the application, the individual within a group provider will not be able to access their provider information electronically and will need to work with their group for updates. So we would go ahead and scroll down here and click Proceed. Here we get our provider agreement document, which we would go through and read, and then click the I accept checkbox down here. And then by clicking yes, we agree to the terms and conditions of the provider agreement. We would go ahead and select yes, and we would scroll down. And here we may or may not, above the portal registration details window, there may or may not be an agreement confirmation window if you are an individual within a group or individual provider that selected an authorized administrator on the association step. So you'll see the question and review the choices. So yes would either mean you create credentials for yourself, or no, where you would forego your access to provider portal. So you would have no access. And remember, if you forego access, your provider would have to make any portal changes through your authorized administrator. So provider portal credentials and associated notifications are only created once, and additional service locations will not receive notifications. Provider portal emails may only be associated with one provider, and if the provider already has an account with the same NPI, the service location will be added to the existing account. If the email is already associated with a provider portal account for a different NPI, credentials will not be generated. The request verification code down here is a one-time email to verify the submitter's identity before submission. The submitter needs access to the inbox to submit the application. So I'm not going to demonstrate submitting the application, but if I did want to submit it, I would click this submit button over here in the right-hand corner of the screen. But I am going to show you the submission confirmation in just a moment. There are a couple more windows that I want to show you that did not populate with this enrollment type. So I'm going to switch back to my slides to show you those in case you encounter them. So here we have our provider type step, and this shows for a facility application. So again, this step is hidden if not applicable based on provider type, provider specialty. So for providers with clinical laboratory improvement amendments or CLIA information, the CLIA number will be entered during this step. Here we have our background check step, and again, this will populate for applicable applications. Fingerprint requirements only apply to high-risk providers and doula providers. So if fingerprints are needed, a notification letter will be generated during the application review process. The fees step, again, will populate for applicable applications. So if a fee is due and check is selected, instructions are available for download after submission. If online is selected, the payment processor will open in a new window. If you decide to complete payment through the payment processor, be sure to return to the PE Wizard to finish the application. Fees are only applicable to high-risk providers who have not already submitted payment to Medicare or another state Medicaid program. If you completed these payments, answer the questions on this page to submit your fee waiver request. The electronic funds transfer or EFT step will also populate for applicable applications. Individual within a group providers and ORPs will not have this step as they are not billing providers. So if the NPI is already associated with a service location on another Virginia Medicaid enrollment application with EFT, the step will be hidden. The linked EFT will be used for the new service location. When revalidating or re-enrolling, the EFT page does not display. EFT changes can be submitted through Provider Portal outside of the revalidation period. So then we have our submit confirmation window. So here we have our application tracking number listed, and when you submit the application, this submit confirmation displays with this ATN. Here we have our application fee form link. So if a fee is still due, the application fee form link is available below the ATN. Up here in the corner, we have our print preview button up in the right hand corner, where you can view a PDF copy of the application by clicking that print preview. When you click Print Preview, the pop-up automatically has all sections selected. You may deselect sections if you do not want to include them in the PDF. Then you'll click Print to generate a PDF that you can save or print. So our next steps after submission. So after you've submitted your application, you can check the status of the application. You'll go to the PE homepage, click Menu. Next, click Provider Enrollment, then click Enrollment Status. So when the Enrollment Status page appears, you'll enter the ATN and password for this application and click Submit. The system will display the enrollment status for the application. So after a determination has been made on the application, you will receive one or more notifications. So if your application is returned for corrections, you will receive a Return to Provider notification with changes that need to be made. This includes providing an additional attachment or editing responses. You have 30 days to make the corrections and resubmit your application. If not completed by the deadline, your application will be denied. So if your application is denied, you will receive a notification with responses that your application was denied. You are not enrolled in the Virginia Medicaid program. If you are able to address the denial reasons, you may submit a new enrollment application. If your application is approved, you'll receive notification of your approval, and ongoing provider maintenance will be conducted in Provider Portal. If you selected to apply for any MCO programs in the General Information section of your application and participation request is submitted to the MCOs. If you do not already have Provider Portal credentials for your NPI, you will receive 2 emails, one with your username and one with your password. If you already have Provider Portal credentials, for example, you completed an application for a new service location for your NPI, you will not receive additional credential information. Instead, the new service location will be matched based on your NPI, and both locations will display in Provider Portal. So I want to stress that if you need to assign delegates for the new location, complete the steps in Provider Portal, as delegate access is not automatically applied. So we do have some additional questions for you. What information is needed to resume or revalidate an enrollment application? Is it the ATN and enrollment password, ATN and NPI, or ATN and Provider Portal password? The correct answer is ATN and enrollment password. So what information is needed to check the status for an enrollment application? And the correct answer is ATN and enrollment password. Provider portal credentials are only sent after an enrollment application is approved. Is this true or false? The correct answer is true. Pending applications are not reflected in Provider Portal. Our last question, Provider Portal credential notifications are sent for each service location. Is this true or false? The correct answer is false. Provider Portal credentials are only sent for the first service location for the NPI. And our last section is revalidation. We're going to briefly touch on the revalidation overview process. So in accordance with the ACA provider enrollment and screening regulations, all Virginia Medicaid providers are required to revalidate their enrollment information at least every 5 years. You will need to review the information in the revalidation application to ensure the information is still accurate, update all necessary sections, and submit the revalidation before your program expires. Once you receive the revalidation notice, you will see a link to the Provider Enrollment Wizard to complete the revalidation application. 90 days before your Virginia Medicaid program is set to expire, you will be notified that it is time to revalidate your enrollment. Notification will come in the form of 2 emails or letters based on the communication preferences you indicated in your enrollment application, or whatever the current preference is in the provider portal if you've updated it after your application was approved. So one notice will include your ATN and the other will include your password. You don't need to create new ones like you did for your initial enrollment. You will also receive reminder notifications at 60 days and 30 days prior to your contract expiring. Failure to complete the revalidation may result in termination from the Virginia Medicaid program. For more information about the revalidation process and how to complete it using the PE Wizard, watch the PRSS 122 Enrollment Revalidation for Providers video on the provider training page. Now it's time to find out what you recall. Question 9. You must create a new password for revalidation. Is this true or false? The correct answer is false. One of the 2 revalidation notifications will include the password. If your application is returned for corrections, how long do you have to submit revisions? Is it 1 week, 30 days, 60 days, or 90 days? The correct answer is 30 days, and this applies to new enrollments and revalidations. So in summary of our provider enrollment PE application session, we have identified criteria needed to complete an enrollment application. We've submitted a PE application, and we've explained the next steps after an application has been submitted. So congratulations, you've completed provider enrollment PE application session, PRSS 111.